Hi, everybody. Jim Graham here for Beyond the Cage, presented by Fight Chicks. On the line, we have a special guest joining me. He will be fighting on the undercard of UFC 184 on February 28th on pay-per-view. He is Mr. James Krause. And James, thanks for joining me on Beyond the Cage.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Now, of course, the holidays were just not too long ago. So how was your Christmas?
Oh, it was good, yeah. I mean, it gets pretty stale, but you know, I have a baby on the way, so I think that'll spice things up on holidays and kind of make them interesting again. So looking forward to that new chapter in my life. But yeah, I mean, everything was great. You know, I got to spend time with my family, got to go visit. So yeah, I mean, it was all good.
Now, did you do anything special for New Year's?
No, man, I'm not a big partier or anything like that, so I just kind of hung out around the house and, you know, did my normal thing.
Now, of course, you know, looking over your career, you fought for just about every major MMA promotion before you finally broke into the UFC back in 2013. And kind of when you were kind of going through that struggle before you got into the UFC, was there ever a point when you were kind of like, man, what do I got to do to get in here? You know, what am I not doing correctly to get into the UFC?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, those thoughts went through my head constantly, really. You know, I mean, I knew I had the talent, and I seen guys that I was beating, and I seen guys that I know I'm better than making it before me. So it's kind of frustrating. But yeah, you know, I knew over time it would just take some time and me getting some quality wins to get right where I needed.
Now, of course, the organization you fought right before you got to the UFC was the RFA. You know, you were kind of one of the first guys to come in through the RFA and then make it to the UFC. Are you surprised at all to see that the RFA, like, you know, since you started back in 2011 to now, the RFA has kind of become almost kind of like the premier feeder organization for the UFC?
No, it really doesn't surprise me at all. That's kind of what their whole idea was. They have great connections. They have a good relationship with the UFC, and that was kind of their whole game plan from the get-go. So, you know, I knew when I was with them that it was a good choice for me to be with, and you know, I did those guys a bunch of favors, and they took care of me too. So it definitely wasn't a one-way street. But you know, I took a few fights on a couple of weeks' notice. You know, I took Joe Jordan's fight on like 13 days notice, 12 days notice, or something like that. And yeah, I mean, I did a lot for them. They did a lot for me, and I knew it would pay off in the end.
I want to go back a little bit on your career here to May of last year when you fought Jamie Varner. Obviously, you know that he had the injury and everything, but a fantastic first round between you two. And just a few fights later, Varner ended up retiring after his loss to Drew Dober. Was that something, you know, obviously you had having fighting him, was that something that you were kind of surprised at to see that he retired? You know, he still was I believe he was only like 30, 31. Was it kind of surprising to see that he retired not too long ago?
I mean, you know, I don't know. I don't know where his head is. You know, the fight with us, I think it kind of messes with him a little bit mentally. You know, he wanted to say that it was a fluke injury, and you know, I think that's a load of crap. You know, I caused the injury. I did it. It was, you know, we planned for months on kicking low on the leg like that. You know, it's not my problem that he didn't know how to defend it right and check with your toes up, not toes down. So, you know, I think that kind of messed with him. You know, I think he came in a little shaky against Dober, and but he's a veteran. You know, he's been in a lot of fights. He's been in a lot of wars. So, you know, I don't really know. I think he's got a gym now, and I think his focus is elsewhere. And it wouldn't surprise me if he came back and fought again for another organization. But I think he kind of knew that his time with the UFC was coming to an end with 4 losses in a row, and maybe just needed time to think about everything. And I'm not really sure where his head is, but yeah, he put his dues in. He had some great fights in the WC and in the UFC. You know, he's done a lot. So definitely don't want to act like I'm talking bad about the guy, because he's done some great things for the sport and put on you know, some awesome fights for the fans. So yeah, kudos to him. Whatever he decides to do is best for him.
Now, of course, your last fight was back in September, UFC 178 against Jorge Masvidal. Unfortunately, that one didn't go your way, but what were you able to take from that fight and kind of apply it into this next camp here for UFC 184?
Yeah, I think I just need to come in and sometimes, you know, whether you work in McDonald's, you work in fighting, sales, whatever, sometimes you just have a bad day. You just don't show up, and that's pretty much what happened to me. I feel like if Jorge and I were to fight again, the outcome would be much different. And, I couldn't get a sense of urgency. I couldn't pull the trigger, and I didn't show up that day. And, like I said, I think the outcome would be much different this time. And, I would love that fight back at some point. Or, I think him and the Bobby Green fight would be great fights for me to go back to back. But I know the UFC is not big on rematches, so I'm okay with earning my way back to the top 10, top 15 guys, and hopefully beating up with those dudes again later.
Now, of course, you're in Broomfield, Colorado with your teammate Tim Elliott, who will be fighting coming up here for the UFC Fight Night Broomfield. And I was just wondering, what did you think about his fight against Zach Makovsky coming up on Valentine's Day?
Yeah, it's a fantastic fight. I mean, both those guys always show up, scrap, and we're excited. We love the matchup. I think Tim is a guy that can literally beat anybody at 125 in the world, and I mean anybody. Sometimes it's just sometimes it's who shows up. All those guys are so good, and they're so evenly skill set matched that sometimes it's just the first mistake loses. So I think Tim matches up very well with Zach. I feel like Tim's a superior wrestler. I feel like he's a superior striker. But Zach is an intelligent fighter. He knows how to rack up points to win rounds. So, I think as long as we stick with our game plan and we play smart and, we do what we're supposed to, I think it's going to be a good fight and a fight for our favor.
Now, sticking with that card there in Broomfield, obviously the main event is Ben Henderson and Brandon Thatch. Ben Henderson moving up to 170 pounds, taking this fight on short notice. Now, obviously, you fought pretty much most of your career at 155. Is that something you've ever considered, like kind of jumping up like that, like that's doing here?
I'm not a huge fan of it, but some of my teammates and coaches and stuff like that think it wouldn't necessarily be a bad idea. I'm a pretty big guy at lightweight. I get pretty heavy, and I'm bigger than some of the welterweights in there. So, I mean, I just don't feel comfortable. I fought my whole career at 155. That's kind of where I want to stay. I think if my guy's on point, I'm doing what I need to be doing. I think that's exactly where I need to be. So, I think that's where I belong. And I'm tall at the weight class. I'm not overpowered. The punching power changes drastically from 155 at 170. So, like I said, I think as long as I don't balloon up or anything like that and get crazy, I think I'll be okay. And I think 55 is where my home is and where I need to be.
On average, how much are you actually, from like the start of a training camp to actually getting down to 155, about how much, weight do you actually shed off?
It depends. If I'm training in the gym every day, 5-6 days a week, twice a day, I'm usually sitting around 185 pounds. But if I'm being lazy, fat, and eating everything in sight, I'll hit 200 every once in a while.
Now, of course, the UFC had a couple fighters they forced to go up a weight class. Calvin Gastelum and John Lineker both forced to go up a weight class. Has it ever been an issue for you getting down to 155?
As far as making it, no. I do it right. I definitely take my time, and if I don't feel like I have ample time to make the weight, I won't even attempt it. So the short notice fights for me, you're probably not going to see me take a lot of those because even if I am training every day and I'm fit and ready to fight, I just can't make the weight in a couple of weeks, which is not possible for me to do. So, like I said, it's going to be hard for me to take short notice fights, but I wouldn't be opposed to moving up and fighting the right person. I think as long as the matchup is there, it has to be the right guy and stuff like that. But I think 55 is where I belong, and I feel great at that weight class. I feel strong, I'm super tall, lengthy, and I think that's where I need to be.
Going back to Ben Henderson for a minute, obviously, like I said, moving up to take on Brandon Thatch. How do you think he will do against the young kid there in Brandon Thatch?
Thatch is a big dude at welterweight, and he had some scary strikes. So, it's anyone's ball game, really. I don't know how to call that fight. I'm interested in watching it. As a fan, I'm pretty excited about that one. But, I think Ben needs to get back to his wrestling roots a little bit more and mix it up. He's a great striker, but he just, as of late, he hasn't threatened the takedown much, which I think, makes it a lot easier to fight him, you know, with just throwing one dimension out there. So I think he needs to mix up the takedowns again. His jiu-jitsu and his wrestling are nasty. You know, he's some of the best in the division. So he just hasn't, as of late, he hasn't been threatening with those as much lately.
Jim Graham talking with UFC lightweight fighter James Krause here on Beyond the Cage, presented by Fight Chicks. You can follow him on Twitter at @TheJamesKrause. And James, I wanted to talk a little bit about this with you here. Obviously, Anderson Silva, Hector Lombard, and a lot of big-name fighters recently have tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs. And I was just wondering if you're shocked to see, especially some of the bigger names in the sport of mixed martial arts, get popped here recently in 2015.
No, I'm not. I wish I could say I was shocked, but in no way, shape, or form am I shocked to hear these guys. I think anybody that knows, kind of knows the game, knows that that's going on, and it's sad. You know, I've always said you can throw a test at me any day of the week, anytime. I'm 100% clean all the time. I don't take any of that crap. I never have, and I never will. You know, I'm not a fan of it, and I'd be more than willing to take a test anytime they want to randomly give me one. But, you know, I think there's, you know, I'm not surprised at all. It's just in professional sports, it's just something that happens, you know, it's something that people do, and they feel like that's what they need, you know, to be a better fighter or a better basketball player or whatever it may be. But, you know, I just don't believe in it. I believe the technique and, you know, being in the gym, time put in, I believe that's what wins fights. And, yeah, so I'm it's not a surprise to me whatsoever, but I'm not in support of it. I'm not a fan of it. And, you know, these guys can keep popping steroids or whatever they want to do, and I'm going to keep doing my thing and laying dudes down.
Now, in the case of Anderson Silva, do you feel that this failed drug test tarnishes his legacy in what many consider he's the greatest fighter of all time?
You know, I don't know. I don't think it necessarily, like, I don't look at it any different, because, I mean, to me, it's neither here nor there. I don't think it tarnishes his legacy. It's not like he's beating guys off of fantastic cardio and muscling guys around. He's beating people, he's knocking guys' heads off. You know, he's technically killing people. So, you know, I don't think the steroids made any difference, maybe for recovery and stuff like that, or whatever he was taking, I don't know. But to me it doesn't. Maybe to others it would. I just, you know, I don't really think about it like that. I think, like I said, I think fights are won and lost in the gym. Technically, obviously, if two fighters are technically equal, then maybe that would come into play. But, you know, Anderson's not muscling guys around. He's not, you know what I mean? Does that make sense? He's technically beating people. He's knocking guys out with head kicks. He's outboxing people. He's put his time in the gym, and it shows in his fight, you know, and that you can't teach that. You can't put that in the needle and shoot it up, you know.
Absolutely, James. And let's look ahead here at your fight at UFC 184. You'll be taking on Valmir Lazaro. And looking at your opponent, Lazaro, what does he bring to the table that you're going to have to watch out for?
You know, he's a tough guy. He's a typical Muay Thai fighter. He marches forward. He's super tough. You know, he likes the low kick. Everything is in ones and twos, and it's as hard as he can. It's just, you know, it's just Muay Thai 101, which, you know, I train with guys that can beat him in Muay Thai fights every day. So it's nothing to me, man. It is what it is. But I think he has some drastic holes in his game. I think he's going to have to make some major improvements to be able to come in and beat me on the 28th.
Now, in his only UFC fight, he took on James Vick back in August, and while that was a barn burner, there was a lot of action. Not just Vick, but him as well. It seemed as though it didn't have a lot of cardio, and is getting this fight into the second, into the third round something that you're going to try to do?
No, I'm going to be pretty upset with myself that if this fight goes out of the first round. I mean, we're talking about two guys that are on two different levels right now. I've been through the ringer. I've fought the best guys in the world, and I always come to fight. I always bring a great fight. You know, this guy just has not fought the caliber of opponents that I have, and he has not beat the people that I have. He's 12-3 with 9 knockouts. He's knocked 9 punching bags out. that don't even know how to put their hands up. So, I'm not that guy. You know what I mean? I'm going to come in, I'm going to put pressure on him, and I'm going to mix it up. The facts are right. They're right on paper there. He has never fought anybody with my experience. He's never fought anybody at my level. Period. Plain and simple.
Looking at the main event of the night, you'll be fighting there on UFC 184, Ronda Rousey against Kat Zingano, Women's Bantamweight Championship. Do you have a pick for that one?
And it's hard to bet against Rousey until somebody shows me otherwise.
All right, and the final question, of course, it was supposed to be the actual main event of UFC 184, Vitor Belfort against Chris Weidman. Chris Weidman once again injured, Vitor Belfort off that card. It was rumored that, he had several other options or whatnot, and some people are kind of calling him ducking fighters or fights. Just kind of maybe on the outside looking as a fighter. Do you feel as though Vitor Belfort is, ducking people or just simply waiting for, the title shot that he was supposed to be getting?
Man, I'm not really sure. I wish I could pick my fights. I don't get that though. You know what I mean? Like I came into the UFC. I fought Stout. I went straight to Bobby Green and Varner and Masvidal. I'm not fighting any chumps, and I'm definitely not picking who I get to fight. So, I think these guys need to fight who's put in front of them. I don't understand it. I don't get it. I guess, I don't understand the mindset behind that. So, I guess if they're allowed to pick who they fight and they have the option in that, more power to them. But, to me, if you want to be the best, you got to beat the best. So, I definitely think, if that is the case, if he is dodging people, which I don't know if he is or not, but if he is, maybe he's just trying to hold out for his fight with Weidman. I can understand that, not wanting to fight anybody else because he has the title shot right now. So, I can understand not wanting to fight anybody else before that unless you think it's a good win or a good matchup. I get that, man, but like I said, us other guys on the other end of the totem pole don't get to pick our fight, so why the hell should these guys?
All right, he is James Krause. You can follow him on Twitter at @TheJamesKrause. His fight against Valmir Lazaro will be on the undercard of UFC 184 on Saturday, February 28th from the Staples Center in Los Angeles, California. And James, thanks again for coming on the show. Really appreciate it and wish you the best of luck on February 28th.
Hey, man, thanks for having me. I appreciate it a ton.
Once again, that was James Krause right here on Beyond the Cage, presented by Fight Chicks.